All right, everybody, we got part 2 of our episode that we started last week with Sai, really around emotional-based decisions versus principle-based decisions. So just a friendly reminder, the question for you is, if your emotions led you into any type of hiding or secrecy, how can you trust them to lead you towards truth and recovery? So today we're going to be asking and continuing to talk about those critical questions of, how do I in recovery define my values when my emotions can't be trusted? We're going to talk a little bit about Sai's experience with how he makes decisions, some that he made with emotions and some that he made with values. So we're going to dive into that with Sai.
Welcome to Beyond the Facade podcast. I'm your host, Luke Gordon, and I'm thrilled to have you join me in this space today. What we're going to be doing is diving deep into the trials and triumphs and truths of seeking authenticity. Becoming your true self isn't about a single action or moment. It's a relentless pursuit, a commitment to self that reveals the rich connection and meaning that our life has to offer. So whether this is your first time tuning in or you're a regular listener, know this: what you're building here goes beyond a conversation. You're here to challenge, to change, and to celebrate the incredible journey of becoming your authentic self. Because when you dare to show up fully, the rewards are immeasurable. So welcome to Beyond the Facade. Let's get started.
All right, everybody, we're back here with Sai. You can tell a different background, different place, all the things. I'm excited to continue with the conversation around emotionally based decisions rather than values-based decisions. So, Sai, you said something in this last one. Hey, if we talk about races, that's a long story for another day. But can we dive back into the experiences you've had of I don't know, maybe giving up on a race because of it was hard versus when it's wise, and making decisions and making choices not based off emotion?
Yeah, absolutely. So my first 100-mile race, I stopped mile 69, right? And the reason I use 69 all the time is because that's the distance I went before I stopped. I would have stopped earlier, but I had to walk the rest of the way to my car. It probably would have ended earlier, but I made the decision to stop earlier than that. With mile 69, that's why I use it, right? I was having issues, bowel movements weren't stopping. And
This was your first long race, right? Your
first 100-mile race. The furthest I'd gone before this race was 32.4. Yeah, 31.2. Sorry, 50K. That was the furthest I'd gone up to that point. Let me backtrack. This furthest race I'd ran, I did a last man standing race where I made it to 49.5 miles. So I had gone a good distance, but that last man standing race is a different type of race. So there's a lot, it's different. That's a different one to explain. And that one also, I didn't keep going due to emotions as well. Emotionally based decision, I can cover that too. But this mile 69, logically, it made sense. I had issues going on, and I just, logically in my mind, it made sense. If I kept going, I'd have no idea what the health consequences were. And come to find out, what I really needed was some medicine to help out with that. Wait about 20, 30 minutes, and I probably would have been just fine, and I could have kept going either way. So with that, it was backed up with logic, but it really came down to, I was out at night, middle of the night, 4 a.m., in the middle of the mountains in West Texas, really cold, even though it was March. But when you've burnt thousands and thousands of calories and you have very little energy in you, and you're climbing, going up and down mountains, and it's cold at 4 a.m. and you haven't seen anybody in 2 to 3 hours, right? You start making decisions like, do I still keep going? What good is going to come out of this? I hear that conversation. I hear that question a lot of times talking to guys. What good is going to come out of having a conversation with my wife about what just came up for me? What good is that? What good is what are your values? Who are you going to choose to be? Okay. And if one thing I want to say clear, like, what is a value, right? A person's principle or standard of behavior. Very plain and simple, okay? One's judgment of
one more time.
So a person's principle or standard of behavior. I think it's a very important definition of value, okay? or you can add to it a little bit one's judgment of what is important in life. Okay. So in that moment of, do I share what just really came up for me and what good is it? If you don't do it, you then are changing your principles or standards of honesty, transparency, integrity, and you're withholding information that's coming up for you. So that's an emotionally based decision out of, could be fear, could be apathy towards the conversation, right? But if we go back to the race, and I'm sorry if I jumped back and forth, at that time, it was like, what good's going to come out of this? I'm in the middle of the night by myself. I probably won't even make the next cutoff. What was my value? My value is I'm not going to quit. Like I hold that. I try to live by that. I just don't quit what I start. And I'll give all the effort I can. But I changed that due to the fear of health problems, which is logically sounds very valid. But I was in pain. My feet hurt. I have never had my feet hurt so bad in my life. It hurt so bad to the point I wasn't walking around the next day after I got home. So that's an emotionally based decision based on pain, fear, and I went against my values. Now, if I hadn't made the cutoff and they pulled me out of it, I would have had a different feeling towards the race. But I still finished the race, left, and within 2 hours, I was like, golly, I could have kept going. There's not much of a worse feeling than knowing you just did something you wish you wouldn't have done because of an emotionally based decision.
So do you regret that?
In a way, I would regret it if I hadn't tried again.
That's powerful.
Yeah.
So say more, will you?
My next race, that was March. I didn't run another race until October, and I ran the Arkansas Traveler 100. You have a 30-hour cutoff. I finished in 28 and a half hours. Greatest feeling I've ever felt in my life. And I'm very grateful for the things I learned from the first race.
Yeah.
I implemented Imodium, right? It makes a huge difference. You got to learn from your mistakes. And I implemented a lot of watermelon in my diet while running.
Watermelon?
Yeah, watermelon.
Sugar. Like 35 questions, but we'll stay away from that.
Sugar and hydration at the same time. Anyway.
Okay, so I got a question for you. Was there anything else you wanted to share as part of your story?
No, I went and completed a race that I probably wouldn't have finished had I not learned from my failure before.
Okay.
So I would have regretted it, but I went and reapplied myself.
There's this thing that I have in recovery that I think was my experience, but also I've noticed with others of what are my values? How do I know what my values are? And people are always like, and I think we talked about this in the part 1, but how do I know how to pick my values? Because I really want to pick my values based off emotion, and I don't really trust my emotions. So how can I pick a value? Because it might mislead me. And I think you talked a little bit about it, but what's the problem with emotionally derived values? Do you have any thoughts on that?
Oh, I may go down a rabbit hole with this one. Look, and I'll use an example of what you're talking about. All right. Someone who is a people pleaser, they want to please people. They do everything to make someone happy. And one of their values is service. They value serving other people. Where's the issue with that? Well, everything they do is to please other people. Why are they doing it? And that is an important aspect, right? I value serving other people, but I'm not a people pleaser. And there's emotions behind that people pleasing that feed their ability to try to make themselves look and be that people pleaser because they're scared to look any other way. And it's really fear driven rather than caring about others driven.
So how do you know when, I wanted to ask a question like this way, but it's probably not the right way to ask it. How do you know if you have the right value?
That is a good question. Last part, we talked about how it could be trial and error. A lot of times, if we sit down in a time of like calmness and we really think through our situations, and we, especially as addicts coming out of addiction or someone who's coming out of a habitual behavior in which we're trying to change, we don't know who we are. And this is one of the first things we have to do is work on figuring out who we are. And part of that is figuring out the standards or behaviors of which we want to live our life by, which is values. And we have to figure out how we want to live that way. So someone in recovery who has been lying and manipulating their whole life and trying to please other people may come back and be like, I do value serving other people, but I value honesty, integrity, and transparency over serving others now, because I've spent my whole life trying to serve others, but it's been all for my own benefit, not actually serving others. And so we might have to change what that value actually is to maybe the exact opposite of what we've been living and try that out for a while.
Okay, so this is huge. Okay, so I put some thought into this, and let's give this a little bit of a reframe here, okay? So if I recognize that I've been asking this question instead of like, what do I feel like I value? Let's reframe this more of I'm going to discover what I value rather than reconstruct. And the biggest thing that I've noticed is people go into values and choose values based upon what other people have told them rather than going through the process of discovering what's important to them. So they end up living off of other people's values. So maybe some questions you could ask yourself is, what do I want to be true about me? And maybe checking into a little bit of when my feelings betrayed me and I made a value decision based off of what I thought was a values decision, what I learned from it about it, what I actually value. And that reframe of a discovery rather than a reconstruct kind of is recovery. Who am I? What am I all about? And that really is around values. Any thoughts on that, Si?
I think you're 100% right. You have a very good use of words on that one of a discovery. And that's one thing, going back to races, I've discovered about myself is that I really value going out and finishing what I start out to do.
Yeah.
And something that I realized after working towards accomplishing that in addiction, I didn't finish many things. And I realized that led to a lot of shame. And after going out and discovering the fact that I value finishing things that I start out to accomplish, it's amazing the difference I have felt. So discovering is very important because you not only have lived a life of living by emotions, and they've all had failed to provide a solidified or proper grounding for your values, but it may seem like they have led you down the wrong path and lied to you at the same time. So we may have been lying to ourselves our whole lives, living off of what other people say or our emotions.
I swear you're like looking at my notes. We're going to take a quick break for a moment. I want to let you know of some things that we have coming up at Choose Recovery Services.
Are you a woman carrying trauma in your body, tension, discomfort, and that tightness that just won't quite release? This is Hallie Roderick, and I would like to invite you to join us this August 26th through 29th in Spanish Fork, Utah, for Revive and Thrive, a 4-day somatic healing intensive designed exclusively for women ready to reclaim their bodies. Guided by expert therapists, coaches, and body-based specialists, you'll learn to uncover where trauma lives in your body and gently release it through somatic practices like art therapy, breath work, brain spotting, energy healing, mindfulness practices, and therapeutic immersion in nature. It's more than just an intensive. It's a sacred sisterhood where you'll process emotions, rebuild resilience, and come home to yourself, physically, emotionally, and spiritually. So if you're ready to step fully back into your life with freedom and strength, Visit the show notes to learn more and to register.
Let's get back to our episode. Let's use your story, and I'm going to ask you some questions and tell me what comes up for you. You good with that?
Yeah.
Okay, so I'm going to give you a 3-part framework, or the listeners, those of you here with us today, 3-part framework for helping you identify your values. So first one, look at the wreckage. Sai, if you look at the wreckage of your behavior back in the day, and then we're getting to a place of identifying values, like what behaviors led you to betray or to harm or led you to shame? What are some of those behaviors? I'm going to guide you through this.
So what led me to those behaviors?
What behaviors led to the betrayal, the harm, or the personal shame?
Behaviors led to the betrayal, harm, or personal shame.
Yeah.
The behaviors were pornography, watching, masturbation, emotional affairs, and lying, manipulating.
Okay.
Yeah, just to give a few.
Okay. When you were on the other side of the wreckage, when you were looking at all the harm, if you reflect on it, what felt like misaligned? What felt like it wasn't actually you when you were participating in that behavior, even though it felt right in the moment?
Is it okay to say all of it?
Probably. Ultimately, you betrayed yourself, right? There was something really
absolutely
important to you and all that, right? It felt right in the moment, but you were misaligned afterwards. You're like, no, that wasn't me. So
It felt like a solution to the problem I was having, and it felt like a relief from whatever was coming up at that moment. It could have been boredom, it could have been fear, it could have been shame, a lot of different things I removed myself from, and it logically, like my brain was very much trained, hey, this will fix the issue quick.
okay, so let's go to part 2 of this question. So now that you're thinking back, you're reflecting, you got the emotion, whatever you're feeling inside around the wreckage, like, okay, what was I doing? And it felt right in the moment, but I was misaligned afterwards. Okay. Okay. So now look at beneath the behavior. What were you really craving? What did you really want? Was it love? Was it respect? Was it connection, security, significance? What was it? What were you really longing for?
You framed this really well, Luke. What I was looking for, craving for, well, there's quite a bit to it. I could go on for a while, but to give the 2 main ones was love.
Okay.
I wanted to feel love and appreciated, and I wanted to feel like I was worth something.
Mm, mm, mm. Love and worth something. Love and what do you say worth something? What does worth something mean? That you have that you have value?
Like I had value. I was providing something that was helpful to other people. I was worth something to someone else. I was worth something to, and that's not that I'm looking to be worth something to someone else, but trying to explain this. I wanted to provide worth and value in what I did. And that's looking back on it, moving forward to where I'm at now. What that really looks like is I wanted to know I was okay. And I really wanted to know that I wasn't a piece of crap.
Okay. All right. So let's go ahead and give me one of the values. You mentioned a couple. Give me one of them.
One of my values?
Yeah, just one of the ones that you mentioned, just one of them. And let me backtrack this.
Okay. I wanted to feel okay with myself. Like I want to do things that are
Like peace within inside of myself?
yeah, peace within myself. Trying to put that one in words.
Yeah, no, that's great. Okay. So define that value as the opposite of the survival behavior. So I wanted peace within inside myself and to be myself. So how did you survive to get that in very destructive ways? What was your survival mechanism to get that peace? Even though you didn't really get it, what were you doing?
All the things I mentioned before, acting out sexually, keeping my mind occupied by other things.
Yeah.
Here's one, and this was very destructive. I would overcompensate and try to do everything around the house. I would be quick to wash the dishes. I'd be quick to do whatever I was asked to do. And I'd be quick to say, I'm sorry.
Okay. So if I look, I'm gonna pull one out of it. I desired peace within myself, and what I do it is I had sexual behavior, and it gave me a mirage, a fake experience with peace within inside of myself. Okay, it gave me a version of that wasn't sustainable. Okay, that wasn't really peace. So your value showed up. Your values show up as like an opposite of the survival behavior. So we call this it's some of my favorite work ever. It's values and shadow expression framework. Let me give you an example of this. If I value authenticity, okay, the shadow expression, the shadow side of this is I seek validation. I'm managing my perception. I'm wearing a mask. I want to come across as like healed or a good man. And I always thought for the longest time, if I'm doing that stuff, I don't value authenticity. And that's so wrong. That's the reason I do that stuff is because I value authenticity, is because I value who I am. So I'm putting on a mask to get people to see who I am. So that's the shadow side. That's the side that I don't want to have take over. But if I have that reframe, that empowered state, then it becomes, I don't need to be perceived as anything. I just need to be real and honest in the moment. That's that empowered state compared to like that reactive state. And that's what I'm thinking of, Si. I've had the pleasure of having a somewhat of a front row seat to your journey. You go from a place of wanting to feel peace through acting out behavior, it not working. And you valued peace within self. And then you go on this journey of running ultras, and you ultimately find yourself in that. You get this real sense of self through that. So the value never changed, right? Anyway, thoughts on that, Si?
No, truthfully, a lot of times I think we have our values picked out, but we don't know how to live by them.
Mm-hmm.
We have learned, hey, I do value this, but in the moment, it feels safer and better to do this.
Mm-hmm.
Right. Give you an example. I have a really good person who's 3 months sober, feeling really good about himself, been going to group for a while, and he's starting to get things in line. Emotionally based, let's start with this. He values family. That's one of his values. Well, he stopped going to group. Okay. Mainly because the thought in his mind was, I want to go home and walk with my wife. I want to stay home and just go spend the Sunday evening and I walk with my wife. Makes sense. It's a value of his. Okay. But the understanding there is an additional value that we need to process everything through rather than just the one value.
Right. Yeah. I like that.
Yeah, I value peace, but at the same time, I also value doing something really hard. And sometimes when you're doing something hard, there's not peace. One of his values is also recovery, living his recovery life as he's supposed to. Because without recovery, he doesn't have his family. Without recovery, he doesn't have his other values either, which is a secure job, which is a job and a career to provide for his family, because acting out takes over that. And as he continues to gain sobriety, he's better equipped to provide for his family. He's better equipped to be present with his family. But because he allowed the thought to, or the emotion of kind of uncomfortability of a group to sway him to do something more comfortable, which isn't a bad choice, to spend time with his family. So you making decisions have to step back and make sure that the choice you make doesn't take away from all your top 4 values. Right? The reason I say 4 is you go more than that, they start overlapping anyway.
Yeah. There's so much overlap. I look at you and your journey and I go, it seems to me from the outside looking in that there's a level of peace inside of you that exists about self, like relationship with self. I'm good with me. I'm not perfect. I don't have everything figured out, but I'm good with me. That seems to exist. Is that fair to say?
That is fair to say, yes.
So that value has always existed. It's just how you went about it. And I just keep thinking about you with the running stuff. Like It's almost seems counterintuitive to realize that what you did to get peace within self really didn't look like it was going to, those activities don't look like they're going to produce that, but they do, that connection to self.
Absolutely. It's kind of like, give you a little history. So after D-Day, one of my brothers literally told me, Luke, you can't run your way to recovery.
Oh man, what do you think about that?
I had another brother tell me, hey, Sai, you have to do something that you enjoy and you can't stop watching sports.
These people all telling you what you can and can't do, right?
Yeah. One of the things I've learned is, going back to what you were asking, right, is learning that the perceived route in which to obtain peace for a lot of other people is different for everyone. For me, I gain peace by doing something hard and knowing that I'm okay. I gain peace by knowing that, go this route, knowing that I have done nothing wrong in the most important relationship to me, which is God. And that's one of the most important relationships. And if I'm okay there, my wife can get mad at me and we can have a hard discussion. But if I've done nothing wrong, and I'll rephrase that from not just knowing I'm okay with God, but knowing I haven't done anything outside my values, there is peace there. It's not just a value, it's my values. And if you can take your time and sit back and make decisions based on your values, not a value, but your values, that time in between a thought and an action, the more time there is in between there, the more likely it is to align with your values. Your emotional based decisions tend to be a lot quicker decisions.
Yeah. I do want to take a moment and maybe give some more examples of, I just really like this, all right, what's my core value? What's my shadow expression, which is a protective/reactive state? And then what's my transformational reframe? What's an empowered state? So I want to give some more examples of these. So maybe somebody goes, I don't know if I value integrity. Do I value integrity? Because I've lied a lot in my life. Like I've been, I don't know, not perfect. I've lacked integrity. So that must mean I don't value it, right? So let me tell you what the shadow expression or the reactive or protective state is of somebody that values integrity. Idealism, rigidity, harsh self-judgment, and unrealistic standards. I mean, just think about that. Like that actually for me would have been hard to see that person values integrity when they're idealistic, when there's a lot of self-judgment, very rigid, unrealistic standards. Integrity is something that's important to them. So if it's not the shadow side, if it's like the transformational side, that empowered state, what does that look like? They value integrity, but it's like integrity is not perfection. It's really me returning to alignment within compassion if I lose my way. So it's less rigid. So that's an example with integrity. I wanted to share one that has to do with one that comes up a lot here, which is, do I value trust? What does that look like for me? Do I value trust in others or in self or others or the process? So the shadow expression, the proactive or reactive state is that person would control, they would micromanage outcomes, they would overfunction. But that more of transformational state, that empowered state is they go, okay, I can release control. I can trust. The strength also means letting go and letting others show up for themselves. I can let people not be perfect. So that person still values trust. There's a couple of more that I wanted to share aside. Does anything come up with those here on the shadow side and the empowered side?
I could talk to a lot of that. And you brought up earlier, oftentimes the things you do value in addiction, and when you move into recovery, you discover that, hey, yeah, I actually do value, let's say, integrity, right? Which, if you don't know, the definition of integrity is the quality of being honest and having strong moral principles or moral uprightness, right? The reason I put that in there having strong moral principles. No one I have ever met who enters recovery they don't value having not strong moral principles. I'm trying to have an issue with words on that one. But everybody that enters recovery values having strong moral principles. And integrity is part of that. And oftentimes we get lost in just knowing how to follow our values. And when we talk about the shadow side, that really comes down to, did you ever actually learn how to have integrity growing up, Luke? Or you get hit in the rear end for lying?
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
We never learned how to overcome our fear of telling the truth because of the outcome that might happen. We never learned to let go of the outcome. And a lot of the times, in my experience, Luke, the reason those shadow parts still exist is because we never learned how to
I love that.
address them and approach them. And it comes down to education. And part of recovery is discovery of how to do things and learning the process of how to address hard emotions and how to do the things that, quite frankly, scare us to death, like having integrity or being honest. So that kind of talking about those shadow side of things, I'll go inner child a little bit. Our inner child, if you let a child drive a bus, what happens? They wreck.
Yeah.
Right.
Not a good thing.
Not a good thing. Run in the bar pit, run over the fence, or run into cars.
You said bar pit.
Yeah, I did. Which is only like an Idaho, Utah thing, apparently. So that happens when you let a kid drive a bus. When we're older and we're still letting our inner child drive our decisions, what happens? It's the same outcome over and over again. Although when we were kids, it may have seemed like it worked. We didn't get hurt because when you drive a bus and you run over a fence, you're not really going to feel much. But that all changes the older you get. And we start trying to redo the same thing over and over again, but we never learned how to actually drive the bus.
Yeah. But that's a good analogy. Did you just come up with that?
Came up with it a while ago myself. Yeah.
So there's this, let me give you one more and then let's talk about how to maybe invite you into a different way to discover values. So let me give you one more of the shadow side. This one comes up a lot in recovery. I value excellence. Okay. So what does that look like? The shadow side of that? Performance, like performative empathy, I think often. Urgency, like there's some urgency, over identification with achievement. What I achieve, that's who I am. That's a shadow expression of that value. Okay, what's a transformational reframe? What's the empowered state with excellence? You might be saying something like excellence being more like sustained through being present in myself, alignment in myself, not through the hustle or the overachieving. So, there's a shadow side of it and there's a transformational reframe that makes it last a while. So the invitation here can be build this into daily routines. If there's a discovery, it can be intentional where you come back to it often and you check in maybe in the morning. What do I value? What's going to happen today? If there's a shadow expression, a shadow side of it that's driving my behavior, what would that be? Here's my favorite part to find values. Here's some framework for you. Parts work. If you don't know what parts work is, I recognize you'd have to do a little bit of research here, but we've talked about it a lot. Parts work integration. So start to invite your protector parts into the conversation. So ask, what are you trying to protect me from? What do you need to feel safe enough to let my core values lead? They'll tell you a lot about what you value, because they're going to point in a direction of something that really, really matters. And it might be surprising what it ends up being. Any other thoughts on this whole values conversation, Sai?
Yeah, absolutely. Another way to find out values You were talking about parts work and the protectors coming out. I'll go back to the inner child part and kind of talk about one of the things that I realized a great way to learn values. Kids love rewards. They like to recognize the benefit of doing something, right? One thing I've implemented early on in recovery, and I try to implement every once in a while, is did I do something today that got me out of my comfort zone? What emotion was it that tried to stop me? How did I feel after doing it? Example, this is an extreme example, but jumping off the cliff into a lake. Scary as all get out. Fear, don't know if it's worth it. When you jump, it feels amazing. Was it worth the jump? Absolutely. You got that reward. How did it feel afterwards versus before? The greatest things in life are on the other side of fear. If you make a fear-based decision, you get stuck in your comfort zone. And a great way to start learning your values is if it's something I fear doing and you do it and it was better on the other side of fear, yeah, it might be worth continuing to make decisions like that. For instance, having hard conversations with my wife. I feared even talking to her. But the more I did, the more I realized I value talking to my wife.
Like, yeah, it points right to it, right? What we feel,
Yeah.
there's the value, right?
Absolutely.
Yeah. So here's the invitation. Go discover. If you're not familiar with your values, do some discovery. Check with those projector parts, the inner child work, like Sai's talking about. You don't have to nail it. You don't have to get it right. Do some exploratory work. Write down 3 values that you lead with, and then journal what the shadow side of that is, what the protector side of that is. And as you go through, this is about finding self. Okay, Sai, we're going to start to wrap out this conversation. Any other thoughts before we wrap it out?
Keep doing something uncomfortable, hard, and you'll start learning how much you can actually accomplish. And you might realize you have some pretty amazing standards in which you want your life to be lived by.
Yeah, absolutely. Okay, thanks for coming back. We won't do a part 3 of this one, Sai, but I hope you come back for another episode in the future.
Absolutely.
All right. Talk to you later, everybody. See ya.
Hey, thanks for joining us today. If this is something that you connected with, I'd love to meet with you more and talk about it. So what you can do is go to chooserecoveryservices.com or check the show notes. And there what we can do is set up a quick conversation to meet. Thanks so much for listening to Beyond the Facade, where we unmask the authentic self.